Hello, everyone. I'm glad you can join us for this chat with one of our Tiny Home Alliance members, Josh Batkin. Josh is co founder of Tiny Footprint Homes in Clinton, Ontario, and lucky for us, he's also a member of the board here at Tiny Home Alliance. Josh and Tiny Footprint Homes are very passionate about the tiny home community, but the reason they build homes is not only commendable, but inspiring. So, with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Josh Batkin. Welcome.
Hey Frank, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have a
Um,
chance to chat with you finally.
yeah, no kidding. It's
Mhm.
it's been hard to find the time. I'm sure on both ends. So I mean, it's nice. It's nice seeing you. Thanks for having me. I love talking about the whole process. So things are going well. We've made a dent so far. We're still very much crawling in the process, but we've started. So I mean, that's sometimes the biggest hurdle is just kind of getting started and continuously trying to move forward progressively.
Right. Taking that first step is often the hardest and probably the longest stride as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so far.
What was the first thing that got you you weren't interested in tiny homes when you were 6 years old, I'm sure of it. So what was the very first thing that kind of put the light bulb on top of your head and said, I think we're going to do this tiny home thing?
So I mean, I've been in and around the building of these kind of units for almost 10 years now. So I mean, it was always something that I was I can't say passionate at the beginning. It was, at the beginning it was a job, and I was just there going through the motions kind of deal to get a paycheck. Um, Kind of as you continue on that same path, and it becomes a passion because you either enjoy what you're doing and make the best of it, or you don't. And normally you should find something else to do. But
Hmm.
I did grow a passion for these kind of units, right? And then after it was COVID that kind of brought my partner and I together. Paul is he's been a licensed carpenter for years now. He's been building homes for over a decade. So we grew up together in the small town of Vanastra, Ontario, and we just kind of merged at the right time. So he was looking to expand his portfolio as well,
Right.
and the tiny home thing, more the bus kind of deal, appealed to him. He likes the idea of like the bus life kind of, camping, always on the road kind of deal. So um, between him and I, we collaborated and we figured out that there's a need for this. We know people personally who have been either victims of rent evictions or just not being able to afford a house for the first time, and having a full-time job, working 40, 50 hours a week. You should be able to have a place to call your own. Um, so it was the affordability of the housing in our area, well, I guess across the country, has been just kind of crazy lately. So I mean,
Yes.
we wanted to try and find some kind of solution that would benefit our community as well as give us another avenue to go down.
See, that's what's striking to me about what really struck me about Tiny Footprint Homes is when you go to the website, you notice something that you don't normally see on a lot of the other ones is the focus on housing affordability, and sort of helping the lowest common denominator to help lift our economy and do good. This is prominent on your website. It's not about, hey, trying to, you're not, you go to the website and it's not an instant push to sell you homes, but then you see this, like that quote I said at the beginning of this video. Um, it's really obvious when you look at your website that that's what you're about, and then it makes you want to look through the website, and then as you look through the website, your designs are wonderful. They're very contemporary, very clean. Who does all the designs for you?
So we have a design team out of Stratford. She's worked actually very well with us. The Hive Design is her company. She is, she's taken extra time. She's found time to kind of, make sure we get the proper floor plans, make sure our customers are happy with what they're getting. For the most part, each one of our designs has been custom. She's, Justine, as well as, myself, Paul, the guys that work for us, everybody has their own input as to, what they think would look cool. And then, we're pretty down to earth and transparent guys. So when we're talking to our customer, we let them know that, this might look cool, this might not look cool, this might be functional, this might not be practical. So I mean, just we kind of take the personal approach, whereas, we have a lady who has a 2-year-old kid, so we're taking very much consideration to make sure that, things are childproof, that there's things that not in the way that, this girl is going to hurt herself on, or anything like that. You want to make sure that it's safe, that it's, nobody's going to be concerned about the quality of these units. So in hiring, an actual BCIN licensed designer, she has the education, she has the knowledge, she has the know-how, to be able to put these things together in a sense that, people feel, very, very happy with what she's done. So
I sense that
um,
you're pretty happy to have someone like that around.
yeah, no, we've been very fortunate to have her with us. So she has the same kind of passion for these things as we do as well.
Hmm.
She likes the idea of, the tiny living, and was, just chomping at the bit when we approached her and asked her, if she'd, like to work with us.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned a little while ago about meeting Paul during COVID, and kind of getting that together. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your beginnings. How did the Tiny Footprint Homes come? Like, was it a conversation? Did somebody draw something on a napkin in a coffee shop? Is it, what kind of a beginnings did you have?
Yeah, so, well, Paul and I, like I kind of mentioned, we actually grew up, together in Vanastra, so we've known each other for, almost 30 years. So when we had been talking, because we both own our own businesses, own construction companies. So like we had always kind of talked back and forth about, what's going on, how things are going, this, that, and everything else. So just it was just one day, there was a shop space available, in our town, and we were just like, so, we've been talking about this a few times, why not actually make it a reality? We have the finances right now to be able to do it. Both of our companies were, doing well, so, and that was especially, we were very appreciative of that, because during COVID, and having customers still let us in their house, trusting us with that was very nice too. So um, giving back to the community was like a priority of ours, because they had helped us succeed through the pandemic, and carry on with life. So the solution was a tiny home, and that was just, we can cut costs down, for people to actually buy something. Let's do this. The shop was available. Um, I think Paul and his wife were right in the midst of having their third kid, when I called him and said, "I'm with the shop owner. Do we make this happen or not?" And he said, "Yep, green light. Let's go." So um,
That'd be a fun day, wouldn't it?
I'm sure it was very exciting for him, having a newborn and then starting a new business that same
Hmm.
day. So it's been great for both of us. So it was, that was the very beginning. And the next day, I believe that was actually probably a Friday. So the following Sunday, we were in there, just moving our stuff, getting stuff ready, ordering our first shipping container, which is the direction that we were originally going to go with these tiny homes.
I see.
Um, but having just the one, is, I don't know, it was too small, I guess, in Ontario. So where we are in Ontario, the 8 by 20 was too small. So we had to kind of use that as a giant billboard, and, sell ourselves to clients, people who would come in and check out the unit, see what it's about, see what we're doing. And yeah, just we got orders, and we were very fortunate to get orders. So we started building almost right away.
So you've actually touched on this a little bit, and we kind of want to know what is the customer experience like, for tiny footprint homes. So I'm a person who's interested. I give you guys a call or an email. Take us through just kind of quickly what this customer experience is like from start to conversation to sort of turning the key in the door of their brand new tiny home.
Yeah. So how it has worked so far as we get, either we get phone calls, we've even gotten texts, but the main inquiries come through email. Um, and it's as simple as, they ask questions, we respond as soon as possible. A lot of the time, um, during the beginning phases, I'd be sitting on the computer anyways, trying to find some way to, how we're going to do this, just research and development, more or less. So I'd be able to respond almost instantly, and that just answering their questions and then getting answers back, and the back and forth for, sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple weeks,
Whatever it takes.
but we're just, we tell them, the next steps. This is roughly what you're going to be into, financially. This is how long your materials are going to take, and then this is how long the build will take once your materials get here. So we tell them that kind of information prior to them coming into our shop. So every customer we've had comes into our shop after prior conversations. Um, some are actually just on a whim, and there are no prior conversations. Um, but so they'll come in, they'll check us out, they'll sit down, they'll talk with Paul and I, just kind of asking the same things, right? What's material like? What are wait times like? And you got to be completely honest with them. It's transparency, and that kind of stuff is very important to us, because otherwise we're just going to kick ourselves in the behind.
No kidding.
So that's that's pretty well that they come in, they place an order, they pay a down payment, we begin the phases. So we have to order all the materials. um, Being a wholesaler through major suppliers is also helpful in a sense where we can show, like, those suppliers have dropped off samples to our shop
Oh yeah.
because they see this tiny home movement picking up as well.
Hmm.
So we've had a lot of wholesale people, from flooring to wall covering to trailers to paint stores. Everybody in between has dropped off samples to our shop so we can show customers, in hopes that we use their product, obviously. And we try to, branch out as locally as possible, to help anybody work with us. So it's pretty neat that way. It gives people like a visual, as to, what colors they like, the kind of schemes they want, just every kind of window, different glass, everything you can think of. So it's beneficial that way. And either they'll take that information home and mull on it for a little bit, or they'll agree right then and there, write a check, we write a receipt, and away we go.
So do they get to have one-on-one contact with your designer, or do you guys sort of liaise with her instead?
No, so yeah, sorry, I missed that part. So they will, in our price, our in our in our build rate, we have a 1 hour consultation with Justine as well. And what she does is, like I said, she'll sit down with the customer over Zoom, just because of, obviously,
Of
uh,
course. I
yep.
don't think we have to
The
explain that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they'll have a Zoom call with her, typically for an hour. Sometimes there are second and third meetings as well,
Gotcha.
just because some projects, one example, is, a little bit lengthier. So she goes the extra mile and reaches out to city planners, on our behalf, and gets the information that we need, that she needs, that we need as a team, compiles all that for us, and kind of keeps us in check that way. So when you have the meeting with Justine, you get to, like I said, kind of more or less customize where you want to put stuff. If you want to have a window here, you can put a window here. If you want to put a door here, you can have a door here. She also has the knowledge of, like, points of regress, right? So you have to be able to escape out of a window if you only have one door. So you have to make sure that that window is big enough at a good point, and whatever else. And she's yeah. So talking with Justine is, I guess, a very comforting meeting, according to everybody who's put an order in so far. So
It's probably the most fun part of the process, between when you spend a lot of money and then when you spend a lot of money again, you get this nice fun part where you get to be creative for a little while. So I can
yeah,
see that being the best part of the process. But let's talk quickly about what you touched on a little bit in that. going to the city, getting approvals and things like that. And this is probably the number one greatest big elephant on the back of tiny homes in general around the planet is how do you do that? How do we offer our members, for example, or what can you do for our members, for example, to help them get past, those questions? How do I get my house approved? How do I know where I can put it? How do I know if it can be permanent or not? All these questions that somebody's really needs to know before they go and buy a tiny house and then suddenly they can't put it anywhere, which happens all the time. So how do we get past that?
Sure. No, and that's why it's it the CSA helps you kind of in that regard, where a lot of municipalities, well, all municipalities kind of have different laws and regulations and bylaws that they have in place. Fortunately, with the amount of steam that this tiny home movement is picking up, a lot of municipalities are actually changing their bylaws, to allow second dwellings or stuff like that. If it's on a farm property, you're allowed to have another home on that farm property to house.
Right? Lane homes are getting approved too up in Ontario, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's that that's just been over the last couple of years as well, right? So um, things are changing almost every day for like minimum floor spaces. A lot of municipalities like to see there's a minimum floor space requirement, and some places have their minimum is 1,100 square feet, so you can't theoretically build anything smaller than that. So I mean, some
That's
of
not
like yeah,
tiny at all. That's
no, it's not tiny
bungalow.
at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's one place coming to my mind right away that has just recently changed their minimum from 1,100 to 180.
Whoa.
So yeah, so because they see that these tiny homes or what have you are catching fire, so they want to be able to and house people, put people in homes, right? So um, I'd like to I'd love to answer that generally,
You can't, I
but
know, yeah.
unfortunately, every place is different. There's different rules that every municipality has in place. Some places are a little bit more lenient towards a tiny home, and some places are not. Right. So it all
Do you
depends on.
help your clients place their tiny homes, or do they normally have somewhere to put it already and you generally don't worry about that? What's your experience with that? Just and talking about just placement, like where do I put it?
Yeah. So far, with the customers we've had, everybody has had a place to put it. They've kind of planned ahead in that sense. A, a few of them are actually just going on farm properties, kind of in the back bush, just hooking up to like a private service and all that stuff, and that's fantastic. We want to be able to offer a place eventually down the road. We've already had plans in works for a tiny home community, which would be the first in our area. But I mean, unfortunately, something like that doesn't happen overnight,
No.
and it's going to take some time. But that is a major goal of ours. Is we want to create something with some sustainability, right? Like if we can create a village of these things and sell them for a good price, where somebody who's even potentially flipping burgers at McDonald's, who's working 40 hours a week, can afford to buy one of these things. It's and we're also working very close with a bank as well. I'm not gonna mention because I don't want to ruin anything. But there's been a bank approach us too, and one of their four pillars that they want to focus on is affordable housing. So they want to kind of stray away from the major banks and be able to offer mortgages on these things. And we've been back and forth. They've been to our shop. It's going to be their third meeting now, coming up in a couple weeks, and they can appreciate our side of things, where we're very adamant, and not it's a big influence because of where we're from. Like we're from a rural community, and it's a lot of farmland. There's not like city jobs where you're making millions of dollars a year. So we want to keep that in mind, right, and conform to the community that we're in. So we want the average person who is grinding it out, who's trying their best, working 40 plus hours a week or whatever have you, to be able to buy something like this.
Yeah, we sure do.
something to call their own. And with that, we want to be able to offer land, right? So like you get a tiny home, you get a chunk of land with it. So that is the goal.
That sounds beautiful. It's a beautiful dream. To make it worthwhile to own a tiny home and make it worthwhile not just for people who want to own them, but for municipalities and governments. That's the people that you have to convince.
Yeah, yeah. We're working close with our MP as well. A
You got
lot
to
of
do that, yeah, with the
yeah,
politicians.
no, a lot of other political individuals as well, like mayors. There's been about 4 different mayors come into our place and do interviews as well. And it's just word is getting around, and I mean the guys who need to know, I think, are finding out. So like people who come into our shop usually are a fan of the tiny home movement. That and we know that when they enter the door, other because we got a big logo on our door, you know what you're coming into. Um, it's either normally you're on base, you're on board, sorry, or you're not on board. And everybody who has come in has kind of greased our wheels a bit in a sense where they commend us for what we're doing. We've had representatives from Habitat for Humanity come in and say that you guys have people rooting for you in the back. Just nobody has the gall to necessarily come up
Oh
and say
yeah,
anything.
Habitat for Humanity is all about the tiny homes.
Yeah, no, it's beneficial for both parties, right? Because we're both kind of we share the same aspirations where we want to be able to we don't want to see people on the streets. We want people living in something safe, something they can call their own, and something that's there for a while.
I find that's a general attitude among tiny home enthusiasts. It's not just sort of a lifestyle somewhere you can have a nice small cabin somewhere and it's cheap. It's way more about realizing how it's more important to live than it is to have a big house. It's more important to realize that you can help. The more people you help, the better off you are, and
Oh, for
everybody
sure.
else is. So let's talk about it. Just we're going to wind this up a little bit, but I really wanted to give you a chance to plug tiny footprint homes. So what would you have to say to the community out there? What do you guys do best? What will you do for the community? What can our members expect from tiny footprint homes?
We're just all we can do, Frank, is really plug away and just keep banging on the doors that we've been banging on. And just we're going to be as relentless as we have to be in order to make this happen. I find persistence is sometimes a good thing that I have a good quality, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes I can probably get pretty annoying, but
Oh, don't
I,
say that.
in doing that, I hope that the passion for what we're trying to do shows, because I am trying to be consistent in who we're talking to, how we're talking to them, um, and just expressing the importance of this stuff. Unfortunately, it does come down to dollars a lot of the time for say municipalities and stuff like that, because I mean that's just what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Is it's tax revenue, which that's what we're used to. That's life. So it's different approach for different areas, right? So just kind of circling back to the personal aspect of it, knowing who you're talking to, kind of what interests them, what would benefit them from having say tiny homes in their area. So you approach each one individually, differently, and just that's the best that we can keep doing until somebody sees our way.
I think a lot of people are seeing your way. So finally, for the very last thing, if you had one piece of advice, one thing to say to somebody who's interested in tiny homes but knows nothing about it, what would be your advice to them?
Just make sure that you're ready to become a minimalist, I guess, because a lot of questions and concerns that we get when designing these things is, well, where am I going to store all my clothes? Where am I going to store all my shoes? Where am I going to, like, where's all this stuff going to go? I'm like, well, we can build you a little shed if you'd like to beside it, but you have to understand you're going tiny. So if you're coming out of like a 3-story house, you might want to maybe either donate some of your belongings that you don't use or do something with it. But just make sure that this is the lifestyle that you were wanting to live, because it's a lifestyle. That's what it is. And I mean, being a minimalist, being a tiny home owner, you have a lot to condense into a small space. So just it's very important that you've thought about this. It's not I wouldn't suggest a spur of the moment decision.
No, not at all. Yeah.
It's something that you should really take seriously, and think out methodically, make sure that this is for you. And as soon as you come to that realization, us and there are other builders around, will be right here ready to help and get you going.
Just because it's a tiny home doesn't mean it's not still a big decision. You're still buying a house.
Oh, absolutely.
At the
Yep.
end of the day, you're still buying a house. Just because it's
Yep.
tiny doesn't mean. But there's a lot more to consider with a tiny home. I'm gonna go on now. There's a lot more to consider when you're buying a tiny home than buying a big house. Like you're saying, buying a big house, you don't have to worry about where you're putting your stuff.
No.
In a lot of cases, that's why somebody buys a bigger home because they just need more room to put all their stuff that they don't use. And
Yes.
it's true, it's got to be a minimalist thing. So I want to thank you for coming on today and sharing with our members what you do all about tiny footprint homes. We're going to put in all your links and everything down in the comments and make sure that everybody can get a hold of you guys. So once again, thanks a lot for talking with us, Josh. And I hope that you and maybe even Paul can join you for another talk in a few months' time.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having us. It was great seeing you again. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye.